All right. Let's go live. See if this works. I'm live, it says. I hope so. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to stream number 24. We're back in our little racing game application here, or game thingy. So we're going to keep going on with that. My racing setup is in the other room right now. My daughter has been playing with my steering wheel on the PlayStation 4. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, you would have probably seen the photos of the very simple rig that we're building for her. So yeah, that's pretty cool. She's enjoying that a lot. Hi, Volcano. Welcome. So yeah, so that's in the other room. So tonight I am using my my trusty little Xbox controller for what we're doing right now, and I thought that would be a good idea to start improving on the input mapping that we have, because right now it's all hard coded, and we really want to make it something that can be set. So we're gonna have to figure out a nice way of doing that. And a nice place of doing that. The other thing that we'll see when we try some things out, because of all the things that we changed with the steering wheel last week, it actually turns out that the game has become pretty hard to play with a normal controller. So that's also something that I need to start looking into and figuring out what we can do to improve that. Now, at the basis, Godot works with an input map where there is a whole bunch of stuff set up automatically. That is just stuff that we have here by default. I often wonder if I shouldn't just remove those things. I'm just getting them out of the way for a minute. The ones that we are currently actually using in our game is our center HMD, which is only used when we're in VR. And we have our shift up and shift down buttons, which I have returned back to their defaults. I still don't know why they were swapped around on the steering wheel. But again, now with input mapping, you can map them yourself. So it doesn't really matter. These just become defaults. That does mean that we're going to change our action system here to make sure that all the inputs are going to be driven through the action system. And then we're going to build a system around that allows the user to change those mappings in our game. That's the goal that we have for tonight. Now, I've never done this before. Obviously, I've used the action system, but I've never tried to make it customizable. So it's going to be an interesting little journey to see how far we can get in... how much time do we have? About 3 hours. So... So before we start setting those up, and I probably will have to close those folders again as a result, let's go and have a look at... and I also reorganized a few things in my folder structure again. So yeah, we do use the UI up, down, left, right, so that's all going to disappear because we're going to allow button mappings with keys. So we need to have a look at what inputs we really have. So we have a steering input, we have a throttle input, and we have a brake input at this point in time. Hi, Rodzilla. I'm doing fine. Hope you're doing good as well. Welcome for joining again. So yeah, so we're going to start with those three inputs, and we have our shift up and shift down. Obviously, eventually we need to go down the route of having... our manual shifter and our clutch input as well. We might put the entry points for that for now, but we'll have a look in what we want to do there. Water. But we'll just start with those and make our base system with that. All right. So let's go back into our project settings and see if it now has... it's remembered them all. That's really good. So we got our shift up and shift down already. I'm going to leave these UI ones in place for now, even though we're not using them. Now, one thing that is interesting is if we, for instance, put a steering input, and this is something that I'm not quite sure yet how that will work. But we want to have a joy axis there, and you will... Oops. Helps if I actually click in the right place. And interestingly enough, we can see that our axes are split between positive and negative. And that is one thing that I kind of understand when you look at, for instance, brake and throttle, where you want to have the positive for throttle and the negative for brake, or something, or the other way around. But obviously for steering, that is a bit troublesome, because we actually have to therefore have a steering left and a steering right action, which is a little bit counterintuitive. And I don't know if there is a way to automatically add those together. So that's another thing where I'm wondering, okay, that is probably something that we can optimize in our mapping interface, that we're going to make those smart enough that our steering is actually one simple setting. So unfortunately we're going to have to mimic that, and therefore for now have a steering left input, and we'll add in our left, and then we need a steering right input, and for that we get a steering right. Now, as far as I'm aware, but we'll see in a minute whether we can confirm that, with the steering left, we get a negative value, and with the steering right, we get a positive value. So in theory, we should be able to add these two together and get the actual input, because when we're steering left, the steering right should be 0. When we're steering right, the steering left should be 0. So we should be able to add those together. We'll have a look if that works. Now, all these actions are triggered right now by our dead zone. So any value above 0.5 or below minus 0.5 will not trigger our action. But we also have an action value entry. So that's going to be an important difference between actions like shift up and shift down, where we really have button presses, and we have our steering actions. So we'll see how we are going to go and reorganize that. So I obviously now need a throttle input. And again, I'm putting all my defaults in there for my gamepad, because that's what we're going to start with to make it all work. And then we're going to start making it customizable so that we could use it with different controllers. So in this case, I'm actually going to do my right stick, so my left stick for steering and my right stick for throttle and braking. Or am I going to use my triggers? I might actually use my triggers. So I'm going to do my R2 for gas, and then brake. Not brake, but brake. English is a nice language. Aha. And we're gonna use our L2 there. And boom. Okay. Cool. So this way we have now set up our default mappings in our action input map, and we're gonna start from there. So one of the things that I want to do, I have to think about what's the best play, because I actually still a few things in this folder that I'm not quite happy about, because this is old stuff that actually needs to go. So my assets are all my third-party stuff that I've brought in. Add-ons are my add-ons, and really in scenes I've got everything that we're currently using. You know what? We're gonna go and create a folder here called input. And we're gonna put everything that has to do with our input mapping in there. And we're gonna start with actually accessing our inputs and handling our inputs. So instead of in our car script, because we might eventually end up with, you know, sub or extended classes of our cars, or, you know, moving things down. I really don't want this logic to be hard coded in here. I actually want that from a centralized script that organizes that does all the processing of these things and then sends it off to whoever is subscribed to it. So we're probably going to do a lot more with signals and a lot more with access methods there. And that also allows us to get some additional logic in there that isn't available by default in our input maps, especially around grabbing values. So we're going to start with, in our inputs folder, we're going to start a new script. Can I do that through here? Yes, I can. And that's going to be inputs. I think that's just a node script. I'm going to actually call it input map. Boom. Here we go. There's our input map. And here we're going to go and get all our logic for handling our inputs. We'll also start putting all our logic in here for changing all our mapping. And we'll take it from there and see how we're going. So I want to auto load this script. So we're going to go in scenes, input, input map. I'm going to go and add that in. So that becomes a, I want to rename that. Can I still rename that? Yes, I can. I want that small. There. So we should have access to that in here. And that actually means that we can probably do a, actually let's do that with an onReady variable. Input map is, and I also always have to remember, I always forget what the notation for that is. Interesting that here I'm doing it with get node in ready. Yeah, both should work. Root / input map. That should give us access to. Oh no, this is ourselves. We need to do that in our car. Sorry about that. All right, let's put that in here. Boom. Because obviously we are in our input map here. Thinking down the wrong path there. So let's start with our easiest one, which is our steering input. And again, this might need to be something that we enhance a little bit more, but we'll see. Get steering input. And here we're simply going to go and get our values. So let's just call that for, actually go and also make sure that we're going to return a float. There we go. Input.get. I think it's action strength that we need to do. Input.get action strength. Right, there we go. All right, and I'm for now just going to return that as is. I can't really think of a situation where we would be getting those values wrong, but it is going to be important with the throttle and the brake, where we want to set up different ranges and have, you know, the ability to inverse our axes and stuff like that. So let's have a quick look here. If we had a button in here, let's have a look. If I go and put a key in there and I press left, then it just becomes left. So I wonder what the value is that we get on a key press. So obviously with the left stick and right stick, we know that we're going to get a, hi Declan, how are you going? We'll get a analog value in from 0 to 1 or 0 to -1, depending on which axes we're working with. But I'm not sure what we get with that. So let's go and have a look at our get action strength input and see if it says anything about that. Returns a value in 0 and 1 representing the intensity of the given action. In a joypad, for example, the further away the axis, analog to that, is from the dead zone, the closer the value will be to 1. If the action is mapped to a control that has no axes as a keyboard, the value will be turned 0 or 1. That is perfect. Cool. Now what I wonder is whether our dead zone is going to turn out to be way too high at 0.5. I think that dead zone is going to have to be a lot lower. We'll see. And therefore this might not work at all. Now, with this one set up, we can go to car and we can get our input map. That means that we actually are going to take that out. We don't care about that anymore because that's now going to be handled by our script. And instead, what we want to do here is just call our get steering input from our input map. So let's see if our steering input does what it's supposed to do. It helps if my controller is still on. That's the other thing that I actually need to find out. For some reason, if my controller is not on when Godot starts, it won't find it. It has to be running. So you can see that our setup is really bad. Okay, so now my left steering is working. My right steering is... I can first of all see that my dead zone is definitely wrong. But it's returning both as a value between 0 and 1. And it also means, but I think that's something that we need to solve in here, is left should be -1 and right should be 1, which I think it is doing. But I think that our steering value is actually being reversed as a result. Well, let's just see how far we get with that. So that means we actually want to invert our left because we want this to be positive on right, negative on left, which I think is now going to be the wrong way around. But that's something we need to fix as far as I care in our car script. I just want to print that out as well. That's going to obviously fill our log full with crap, but that will help us find out if everything's working. Now that also means that our left, this is way, way, way too much. So I'm going to put that on 0.1. I'm going to put that on 0.1. I'm going to put that on 0.1. And I'm going to put that one on 0.1. All right. And again, those eventually need to become settable by the user, but we want a very low value there. All right. So now we have that our steering works, but it works in reverse. Now what I really want to know is I'm now steering left. And left is -1 and right is 1. So the values that I'm getting returned are exactly what I want to have returned. But they're having the exact opposite effect. I actually want to go and type this. There we go. Let's put a remark here and say returns. Come on, let's learn to type. -1 when steering left, 0 when center, and 1 when steering right. Boom. So that's that. Now let's have a look at everywhere that we're using our steering value here. So obviously I want to get this out because we're not going to be using that anymore. If we're using a keyboard, we are going to have a keyboard setup, a keyboard mapping. Everything is going to go work through the mappings. So we have our steering angle here, which is actually going directly into that. So I think this actually needs to be negated. And this needs to be like that. Again, I don't feel that we should be making it the other way around, that left is suddenly 1 and right is suddenly -1. Not quite sure why I see right as positive and left as negative. It's just something I'm used to. But let's see if our steering is now sensible. So yeah, steering left, steering right. Now notice how much a steering wheel turns, and that's again based on the settings of our what you call it? Of our actual steering wheel that I was using. So that's again something that will need to become settable. But our steering works now, and I don't really have a noticeable dead zone anymore. So that is working too. Now, one of the things that I really wanted to do here, and I need to figure out the best way to do that. And I think we can't do that until we actually have an interface. That's going to be interesting, actually, to see how we're going to do that. I want to actually create, well, first of all, I want to make sure that we have some of these maximums, like the maximum steer input. So the maximum steer angle is obviously based on our car. What's the maximum angle that the car can steer with, full input of our joystick. But we want our steering wheel to be dependent on how much we actually turn our steering wheel. Now, with that, with the G-force steering wheel, with a proper steering wheel, which allows you to fully turn around, I want that mapping to be 1-to-1. So if I turn the steering wheel 45 degrees, I want the steering wheel to turn 45 degrees. But when I'm using a controller, I actually want to have fine control over the first bit of steering, and then much larger control if I really steer in. So we want to actually create a curve there. But because we can't set up a curve in the UI here purely in code, that's something that we're going to have to tackle a little bit later once we start getting our mappings to work. All right. And as I'm probably going to go by processing these individual. All right, let's do the same thing for our throttle and for our, what you call it? For our throttle and for our braking. Now, one thing that I wonder about, it's a good one. Because I think one of the problems that we're going to be having is this disjoint between the positive and negative axes. And that's making me really wonder if I want to use Godot's input map. Because think of the G29 setup that we were using last week. When I depress the throttle actually is a full axis going from -1 to 1. So that would mean that I actually need to break up my throttle into 2 inputs as well, which is not very nice, to be honest. So I'm seriously wondering if we should not just have this as a setting in our input map logic, because we're going to have a UI for it anyway. And instead of using using our Godot action map, is just to react directly to the axes and just do the mapping all ourselves. That's a real shame. That would be, would make so much more sense if we just have, I want the axis 0 value from -1 to 1. And we don't have that in here. I'm not sure I like this part of the input map. I remember having the discussions when this was added to the input map logic, because originally the input map was only usable for button inputs. Axis input, you have to always directly access the axes inside of the Godot input settings. And for games like platformers and stuff like that, where you always have, move left, move right, jump up, jump down, it makes a lot of sense to have these broken up. But for the type of game that we are making here, it actually doesn't make sense that we don't have the ability to just say, I want to have a normal axis. So yeah, I think we're going down the wrong path with this. So I'm going to take these out. There we go. And I'm actually going to change that over here. And I'm going to make those export variables. And now I have to remember, I have to do one of my add-ons, if I remember correctly. Here's the extra tools. Might be in one of these. Nope. Oh, I did it like that. Okay. No, I'm not going to do that here. That's just a little overdone. And besides, it's going to be... Oh, okay, so we're going to have to... So this rules out our keyboard at this point in time. Unless... Let's have a look. That's joystick mapping data. So here we have access to our input map. And that's going to input events. I am part of the engine developer team in a sense that I do a lot of the VR work in the Godot engine. So in my spare time, yes, I am. But that doesn't mean that I am involved in everything that happens in the Godot engine. So those are just the events that are being sent, okay? Well, for now, we're just going to do it like this. I'm going to make that an export var during device. So that's going to be our joystick device. And we're going to figure out later on if we do want to do keyboard inputs for this, whether we have some sort of keyboard overrule for this. That's fine. So that's going to be axis 0. So in this case, that's going to mean that we simply get joystick axes, steering device, steering axes. So that's going to come in like this. Let me think. What's all going on here? Okay. So do I want to have some sort of consistency with that? I'm right now thinking about when we look at. Hi, Dave Murphy. Good morning. Um, Again, looking at my joypad, and we have the options to make this throttle and this brake, but we also have the option to make front and back movement, throttle brake. In which case, here we have a full motion from 0 to 1, 0 to 1. Here we have the option that it's 0 to 1 for throttle, but then the same axis 0 to -1 for brake. And then we have the situation as with our G-force, our G29 pedals, or I presume most other pedals, where it's going all the way from -1 to 1. So we need to support all those different settings and say, well, you know what? This is the range that we're going to use. Now for steering, I'm going to ignore that range. I don't really see any sort of input where the steering wouldn't be going from -1 to 1, unless we want to support, analog steering, so with buttons or with keyboard, and possibly at some point we will. But I think for the throttle and for the brake, we're going to have to do a little bit more logic there, and I think we're going to be doing that with an enum that will determine how we're going to process the value. And for that, I actually do want to have a look at this, because I always forget the mode, I'm going to call that one. I always forget the syntax for this. So this is going to be 0 to 1, 0 to -1, -1 to 1, and we'll need an inverse option with that. So here we're going to clamp between 0 and 1. Here we're going to clamp between 0 and -1, and here we're going to just take the value as is. All right. And that should mean that we can now say export var throttle device. And again, I want separate device numbers here in case someone has... Yeah, you can convert them between that. Yes, it's Alex. Between -1 and 1 to 0 and 1, obviously. But I need to know what inputs we are getting, so that the user has the ability to make a selection there and say, hey, I'm using pedals, and my pedals go from -1 to 1, so that's going to be my input. And obviously, we need to handle that properly. And actually, the last one that we want to do here is no, we don't want that for this one. Okay. Yeah, because an invert, we're going to actually do 1 minus that value. Yeah, I think that's going to work fine. Export var total axes. What was our throttle axes again? I can't remember. Seven. Okay, and then we just do export axis mode var total mode, and that's going to be 0 to 1, and we're going to do an export. I actually want to type all these guys, so this is going to be an int. That one's going to be an int. There we go. Total inverse. There we go. Axis mode 0 to 1. There we go. And that, I think, was 6. And that's going to be brake device. Brake. Okay. So let's make a convenience function for that. Is input value floats mode access mode inverts. Boom. It's going to return a float. Work. So if mode access mode 0 to 1. Let's actually say, oh, now we can do that like that. That's okay. So value is going to be clamp value 0 to 1. Because again, you know, let's say that we are using our right stick for brake and call it braking and acceleration, then we get the same axis value. We're going to be using the same axis, so we want to clamp the David, always show off your math skills, mate. So yeah, then we're using the same value, but when it's a negative, we only want to get the positive bit. We just want to leave it at 0. So here we're going to do axis mode 0 to -1. And in this case, we're going to go and clamp it from -1 to 0. But I also want to invert that. So we actually want a value from 0 to 1 in this case. We actually don't care that it's negative. In the other case, value is value, so actually we don't need to do anything. So in the it doesn't like that. Well, that's interesting because we define it here, but we can't use that as an input. You know, then that's just going to become an int. That's fine. Actually, want to return a value here. So in the other situation, my -1 to 1, we're just going to use it as is. But now we want the inverse. And that's simply going to be value is 0.1 minus value. So if it's 0 to 1, it now becomes 1 to 0. And that turned out to be important when we looked at our pedals, where completely pressing the throttle down actually gave us a value of -1. It's really weird, but that's just the way that was set up. Hi, Ivan. How you going? Yeah, math ends when integer division starts. Yeah. Hooray for doing things on the molecular level, or atom level, I should say. Integers are weird. All right. So we don't have that for our steering input. I am going to make a remark here, is that we're going to apply our curve here. And that's going to be interesting because if it's negative, we actually need to temporarily make it positive to apply a curve. But let's put a to do there. Yep. Eventually have a curve system there. When we create a ICO file, where is the 8x8 image used? You mean like the oh, that's just a PNG file, isn't it? I know that ICO files are used when you export, because Windows internally uses ICO files. But I think nowadays you can just use the PNG for that. So, you know, in the olden days, long time ago, ICO files were the only ways to get icons in Windows, and that was the only way that you could actually get your icon attached to your executable, so that when you look in, you know, Windows Explorer, you would actually see the icon of your application there. And that would also fuel, obviously, the icons that you see on your desktop and stuff like that when you create shortcuts and that sort of stuff. Um, so that's where icons are used. They're basically just images. So I don't think 8x8 is used though, because the one over here is, I think the smallest size on Windows is 16x16. So honestly, I don't know. I really can't answer that too much. Yeah, I don't, I think icons has always been an optional thing. I think it will default to some default Windows icon. And again, as far as I know, the icon.png file is, where I'm going here, is being used for that by default. I've never really looked at that because I don't really care about my icons. I know that, I remember that when I was doing the Apple exports, it really wanted all the different sizes of the icons because of whatever it was. Oh, my stream is saying that once in a while it just drops out for a bit, so I hope you guys aren't missing too much. Yeah, RC files. They still exist. The RC files. It's still part of your executable. It's just more hidden nowadays. Um, but yeah, as far as I know, the only places where the icons are used are to get your shortcuts and stuff like that. So, but I'm no idea if an 8x8 image is still used anywhere. That can't imagine where you would use an 8x8 image. I don't know. I'm a 3D guy, so I don't really deal with that too much. Yeah, they might have on Reddit or on Discord. Maybe they might know but I can't really think. Again, I do know that if you do, if you export to iOS, you do need to specify all the different icons. iOS will not accept your application if you don't supply all the different icons and all the different sizes, because they display those on the home screen. So without an icon, you can't display your app on the home screen. And they have all the different sizes for all the different models of iPhones. Yeah, they can contain all the different sizes. Although I rarely see them combined nowadays. Most people will have separate icon files for all the different resolutions, or just use PNG files because most of the applications now support PNG and will convert it to whatever is needed. Okay, let's get our throttle inputs, and again we output a float. So we start by just getting our inputs. Oh, that's device. And then here we are simply going to return process inputs throttle, and then throttle mode and throttle inverse. Which also means that I want to have a default here of false. So make sure that I've got all my defaults set. So, all right. Yeah, oh yeah, that's possible. Those little tray icons over here. These are probably 8x8. Well, they're probably 16x16 still on this one, but yeah, maybe on very small screens. They might be 8x8. That's very possible. So yeah, it's all a support thing, and Windows does go crazy on the backwards compatibility. So they do tend to want to have things supported for ages and ages and ages. Inputs. Okay. So that in theory should mean that we could replace in our car script our inputs. So I'm going to go and get rid of those. hopefully it'll start complaining where it no longer has those. There we go. So this is going to become... And now I don't need those commented outlines because those were for our steering wheel. That gets throttle inputs. Brake input. I don't want that anymore. So, we also no longer need these because we've now got that all sorted. Do we do a dead zone thing here? Hi, Jack. How you going? Glad you could join tonight. I think I'm actually going to have a global... Oh, where are we? A global dead zone. I don't really see... why we would have that per axis. And that means we actually do want to have an else in here. So what we're here going to do is if value smaller than dead zone, value is 0. We can do that here as well. Actually, no, we can make our lives easier. Now, I'm wondering if I should do that in the inverse. I think I should do that after the inverse. So in this case, what we're going to say is if our absolute value is smaller than dead zone. So if we now get a negative value, we also still have our dead zone slightly in the middle. I don't know, Andre. I think when you look at Godot 3.2, you can do a lot of stuff with 3D already. Yes, there's a lot of stuff missing, but you can make things look pretty good if you know what you're doing. When you look at all the stuff that's happening with the Vulkan renderer, all the stuff that John is working on right now, that's looking pretty cool. There's some really cool things in it. As for converting my projects to Godot 4, some of them, yes. I'm not sure about all of them. I'm not sure what the timing will be, especially because I do a lot of things in VR. And while we are going to start working on getting VR to work in Godot 4 pretty soon, there's going to be some stuff happening on that front really soon. Obviously, I need to wait on that for a number of my projects. Also, some of the projects that have been, like, for instance, the weapon tutorial series that I'm doing, I don't think there's a point moving that to Godot 4. But I think something like the racing game here, I probably will at some point. And of course, my my space game that I'm working on. By the looks of things, that's going to be, a project that I'll be busy for many months, if not years, to come. So yeah, I'll probably be moving that forward. Yeah, the changes in GDScript. GDScript is making leaps and bounds in Godot 4. The advantage of that is that it's faster, it's more capable. It really addresses a lot of the points that a lot of people have been saying, well, this is what we don't really like about GDScript. But the downside of that is a lot of rewriting. There is quite a lot of breakage in it. I actually played around with it the other day. I think we did it on stream when I tried to get the joystick thing to work. That would be a bit of a pain. Oh, that was a bit of a pain. Now, that said, it is not even in alpha, so I do know from past experience that the closer we get to release, there will be more work done in automatically converting code. There's obviously a lot of abilities, where these things are renamed, and I know that it already does a lot. Like for instance, class names that have changed, they will automatically be updated when you import. But yeah, you will have to go through things like that. Nox Gaming. The current master branch of Godot 4 is Vulkan only. OpenGL support is planned, but I'm not sure if that is going to be in the 4.0 release or if the 4.0 release will be concentrating on Vulkan, seeing that OpenGL works in 3.2 just fine. And that they're going to be bringing OpenGL in later on. But I do know that they are planning OpenGL support in Godot 4 to support lower end hardware, so older phones and that sort of stuff. And how will you break broken code is finding all the bugs. And that is just part of, that is a choice that people will be making, right? When you have an application that is or a game that's very far along, you probably won't be making the jump to Godot 4 because the effort involved in going through all your code and finding all the things that need to be changed is probably not worth the investment, especially if you're that far along with your game. You probably have already optimized it for Godot 3, and you probably won't have much benefit going to Godot 4 anyway. But when you're still pretty early on in your development cycle, then it's worth taking those couple of days to go through your, or maybe even weeks, depending on how big your project already is, to go through all of that and have a look at converting your code. And it's just a matter of going through, finding what needs to be changed. Obviously Godot does a pretty good job at telling you where code is broken, especially when it comes down to things that have to be renamed and stuff like that. So yeah. And as far as Godot supporting full body VR, that's up to your hardware. Godot is able to get all the inputs that are available in for the Open VR platform or the Oculus platform, whichever one you're using. So for full body, you generally have to go down the Open VR path and start using either pucks or some other input device and handle those inputs. Godot will get all the tracker information, and you just need to do something with it. Anyway, so where were we? We've got all the inputs. We got the break stuff in here. We just apply that. So let's see if everything still works. That's not going to work because my controller shut down again. And I really need to find out if there is a way to have Godot react to new controllers being brought in. So we've got our throttle still working, and I'm using that on that one, and my brake is still working. So for this controller, it looks like it's okay. So let's go and see if we can change our mapping to using our thumbstick so that we can test if our 0 to 1 and 0 to -1, or sorry, 0 to -1 modes work. So I just need to go and find out what those are. So I want to do the right stick, so that's axis 3. So let's go and say we're going to be using 3. Here we're also going to be using 3. And this is going to be -1. It is possible that we have now put them the wrong way around. Now we don't need to inverse it because it's already doing 0 to -1, converting it to 0 to +1. And +1 should still be full throttle or full brake. So hopefully that'll work. Well, actually, interestingly enough, when you look at the contacts, when you look at the contact page, keep in mind that that is for contacting the core developers for commercial support, the best places to have, support questions are Discord and IRC. Those are really the best places to get your help from. Now, obviously, I don't mind reacting while we're developing here because that is part of what I do. But yeah. Okay, so it is reversed now. So my brake is my my throttle, and my throttle is my brake. But it is working. So that's interesting. That up is actually -1. My PC spec. So I've got two PCs here that I am working with. And I say that on purpose because I actually started building the racing game on my old PC. So my old PC is they're both laptops. My old PC is if I recall correctly, an i5 Intel with a 1060 GeForce inside, and my new laptop is an i7 with a, is it a 2070? Is it 2070 or a 2080? I'm not sure. So it's an Intel i7, 2.2 gigahertz. But what is, let's say here? Components. Let's actually just look that up on our NVIDIA thing. Where is my NVIDIA thing? My God, let's see my NVIDIA thing. Display settings. No, I need to go to the NVIDIA control panel for that. Here we go. Can't even remember what's inside of this. So, does it not tell us what we have? That sucks. Yeah, 2070 RTX. So this is a pretty beefy laptop. But this project, the whole car project, actually works on lower end hardware, and I've even had it running on the Glass 2 driver, and again, it built for VR originally, so in non-VR, it's still a very simple game at this point in time. Linkies, GodotEngine.org. Come on, let's go. Community. There's your link to the Discord and your links to IRC and Matrix channels. So Discord is the one that I actually recommend most. IRC is where you find a lot of the core developers, so Akian and Radus. They tend to hang out more on IRC than on Discord, but Discord is far more active. And you have different channels for all, for beginner questions or VR questions or GE native questions, etc., etc. Yeah, you can't paste links into the chat. I believe. I think it throws it out of there. Although Andres one for some reason survived it, so that was interesting. Maybe they've become a little less what do you call it? A little less strict with it. But that's also why I just went there on my browser. A little bit easier. Okie doke. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly do this the right way around. There we go. Now, it will be a little bit too much work tonight to actually bring my whole steering wheel setup out here again. But obviously, I will need to test it at some point in time. So now, pushing up is actually going, and pulling down is hitting the brakes. So that's all working the way that it should. Now, we really need to change the settings on my car, because now that it actually can drive and drive a lot faster, we can see that our suspension is way off. But I'm going to leave that for another time, because one of the videos that I'm going to do soon when we get back into that is I actually want to make that configurable in the game. And that is now the next step that we need to do for our input map. Now, Obviously, the nicest way to do this is to do this in game with the settings menu. And we might start there, but I'm going to make it a little bit more tricky than just our normal way of doing things, because I also need to make sure that it works in VR. Now, I think tonight that's going to be a little bit too much to go all the way there, because then we will never finish before 12. How much time we got left? We still got 2 hours left. That's pretty good. So yeah, I might go for a shortcut first to get the UI itself working, and then we'll see if we can then, we can take the next step and actually also make it work in VR. But I'm probably going to have to do that off camera at some point in time. So I'm going to build it as a normal 2D scene, but eventually it'll be put into its own viewport, which we will then render on a 3D object and then have interaction with that, which is also something that I've already done in my space game. So I kind of already covered it to some part, but we'll need to do that again. Alrighty, I want to close that one because we don't need that one anymore. Do we have something already in here that we can use? I'm just thinking of what button we're going to use to bring up the settings. So for that, I am going to use an action. We're going to call that open settings. And we're going to simply bind that to a key, and let's just bind that to the escape key. There we go. Not sure if that's a good choice, but I need something. Okay, so we're not going to have that in our startup. Our startup is just going to be, are we going to running in desktop or VR? So for now, I'm just going to implement it in desktop mode. Let's go and close that. Actually, we're probably going to implement it in our main construct. So depending on whether you click on desktop or whether you click on VR, we either open up our desktop scene or we open up our VR scene. And they're basically both the same. The only difference is that in the desktop scene, we have a fixed camera. And in the VR scene, we obviously are controlling our camera with our VR headset. Eventually, the desktop one, I want to add in camera switching and things like that, because of course in the desktop version you can do more things with that. Well, maybe in both, I'm not sure yet. But they both inherit from our construct, and this is the same logic that I built in my background loading tutorial. So this allows us to load in scenes and then switch scenes and all that sort of stuff with background loading and have nice transitions between them. This, therefore, is always our core implementation. And when we then look at our desktop, all we see is that there's a camera in there. And I think that's probably a little bit of, no, it's still using the same script. So it's not even using additional logic. So we can put in our UI elements for our settings and stuff, things that we want to have available everywhere in the application. We can add that in here. Now, like I said before, what I really want to do there is make the settings menu render to a viewport and then display that viewport on an object on screen so that we can also use it in VR. But for now, we're just going to put it straight into here. It's going to be a subscene anyway. And eventually moving that over to be using a viewport should be relatively straightforward. I'm wondering if we should have called that settings, because elsewhere I'm going to have a wild growth of things. I think that probably is a good idea. Just to be safe, I'm going to close those things, and I'm going to rename this folder to settings. There we go. And now we have to check if our auto load is still good. Yep, that's still good. Perfect. So we can go and create a new 3D scene here. And I'm just going to use a canvas layer here. All the settings. Now, this should really be a settings menu with different options. So let's actually go and save this for now. Oops. There we go. Are we going to do something with a pane there? Do we have a pane? I don't know. No. Panel containers. Well, that will have different tabs. I'm guessing that would look like this guy, right? Tabs. And I don't really think I want that. I think we're just going to put our input map settings on here for now. And then later on we'll figure out whether, because I don't have any other settings related UI yet. We're just going to do our input mapping here. I think we're just going to stick with that for now. Okay. I just want to have a... I'm going to put a button on here just so that we can see whether it works. Call that test. Boom. I'm just going to put that in the middle. Don't really care where it is. Let's go to our construct. No. This one. And we're just going to put a setting screen there. All right, so that's already visible. So in theory, we should now have a big test button in the middle of our screen. Look at that. Perfect. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. If I use a canvas layer, I can't hide it. Maybe canvas layer isn't the best one to use then. We're then going to use a panel maybe. Let's go and have a look, because I've never built one of these. That's not really what I wanted. I want a tutorial for that thing. Let's go have a look at the Q&A. Well, that's definitely how we want to pause our game, so that's pretty cool. But these are only classes. I want to see how does it actually work. That's all that sort of stuff. That's not what we want. That's a shame. There is no tutorial page on using a pop-up. Pop-up. Okay, what if we make this a pop-up dialog then? Should a pop-up will not be hidden when a click event occurs outside of it. Okay, we'll leave that for what it is. So how does it get a size? Um, Pop-ups can base control used to show dialogues and pop-ups. The sub window and model by default C control has helped us with custom pop-up behavior. All pop-up methods ensure correct placement within the viewport. Center of the screen relative to its current canvas transfer. At the current size, or the size determined by size. Pop-ups will hide by default unless you call pop-up or any of the pop-up functions making them visible for editing is fine. But they will hide upon running. Yeah, that's what we want, isn't it? Alright. Oh. Yeah. That's what I want to do. So, cool. Let's just make that work and say um okay. No, okay. So on our input, we check if the event that we're getting is an input event action. Then we're checking if it's an open settings action and whether it's pressed. So I think that's the only situation that we're actually getting that action. And then we open up our pop-up centered. Now I've got no idea how much it does there. But I just want to see whether it opens up. Okay, so I don't see anything happening. Let's see if it's our input that's not working or that we don't understand how this actually works. Both of which are very possible. No, I'm not getting my input event. Okay. I wonder if I can actually do it that way. Or else we can do it the other way. There we go. And here we do if input don't is action just pressed, open settings. And we'll do this like that. Easy. Don't really want to waste too much time on figuring out whether there is a better way to do the input mapping. And that actually opens up. I think if I click somewhere else, it closes it again. Okay. Sweet. Now what I wonder about, oh, it keeps displaying that. Let's go and put a rectangle behind there. Color rect. Just so that we have a background for our settings. I want you behind, no, you behind the button. Just gonna put my button there. I just want to see how that centering works. Again, I've never used pop-up, so this is new to me. Okay, so that is starting in the corner. So what defines the size of our... Because I was expecting that to be centered, and it's not. Did we open up centered? Let's double check. Yeah, pop-up centered. So, what defines the size of our pop-up? Do we need to just specify that? It's possible. Let's see. 400 by 400. Hey, look at that. We actually have that. So, let's go and get rid of you. Let's go put you somewhere in the middle. Let's have a look. Perfect. Okay, so we just needed to give our panel a size so that we actually see what is going on. Okay, cool. Sweet. Okay. Now, let's go and do what we found here. And, of course, I removed that already. How good is that? Let's go get a script for our settings. We have notes here. There we go. So when we're showing it, we're going to pause it. And when we hide, we're going to unpause our game. Just going to run this full screen for a second. That's pretty cool. It nicely pauses our game. Perfect. And I'm guessing as long as I click within this, that's still working. Oh, that's pretty cool. I don't have a quit button yet. That'll be interesting. All right. Now I gotta define a UI for all our different settings of our joystick. Okay. Actually, let's just do this. Close pop-up. We're gonna call you close. There we go. And then okay, do we have a close function on this? I guess we can just turn visible to false. I guess that will hide it. Hopefully that will also call our unpause. Let us see. Okay, so I wonder if because our game is paused, if that's the reason why we can't actually click our button. Do we have something in here that we can say ignore pause? No, that's all fine. Get something in here. Physics will not be called in nodes. Input will not be called anymore either. Yeah. Whitelisting nodes. There we go. So it should be in here. Here we go. So I guess as long as we have our parent on process, because these guys are set on inherited, that should mean that this should still work when paused. Let's see if that's true. There we go. Ah, cool. All right. So we got a start of a setting dialog. So, okay. Hey, Bailey. Well, for me, it's getting late at night. We're doing good, thanks. Hope you're good. Trying to think of how I'm going to do this mapping window. So obviously, I'm wondering if I should do any sort of container. I think I will. I think I'm going to do a VBox container first. Here we go. We're just going to go and fill our screen with that. Now I'm going to do a HBox container. I'm going to call that steering. Then I just want to go and show a couple of things. So we're going to start with a label. And we're going to say steering. Now, actually two things, both here. I do want to use slightly bigger font. We can actually see what it says. Looks a little bit blurry to me though, that's weird. I don't know why it does that. It does the same if I do that for my label. I don't think that this one... Leave that alone for now. Yeah, I've worked with viewport shaders before. Well, I usually use just an orthographic camera pointing down on my scene for that sort of stuff. But, you know, casting a Vec 3 to a Vec 2 is just using... Ah, can you use swizzles in Godot? I think so. You should just be able to just do, you know, vector.xz if that's what you want. All right. Just trying to think about the best way to do this. What do you think? Okay. Just gonna call that one name. That one called mapped. I'm just gonna have a placeholder text here. Device X. Because I don't sort of think that I'm going to run out of space with this thing. Make that a bit bigger. Bigger as well. I would actually want to do... I'm going to make that minimum size of 100 so that we have space. Might actually make that 125. There we go. Obviously, this needs to have the same font as well. There we go. Is it me or is it slightly different height? They should be aligned. Might just be an optical illusion. I'm not sure. I also want to make sure that we have... no. All right, so we don't have a second one. Actually, we'll add... So this is going to be called throttle. And no, I can't do that. Boom. I'm going to become throttle. Yeah, let's not do that. And break. Okay. All right. So you want a bit of an interlace effect on that. Not sure how you would accomplish that very easily. You could, you know, draw one line and then skip one line and draw one line, and then just sort of flipping it around. Well, I'm going to go to bed after I finish my stream. So, let's have a look. Button. We call that map. Fonts load. font. That's going to be our map action. Yeah, by our parent. They should be able to. Can I only do that by giving these guys a minimum size? That would be pretty sad. Oh, that's what it is. Again, this is not my area of expertise. I usually do 3D stuff. So I'm probably doing this in a very inefficient way. I don't know if Godot has some sort of automatic grid layout. Probably has. I think I probably also would want this one to be in the center. That's pretty cool. So let's do that. A little bit up. But at least it's nicely in the center. I'm going to be spending time with my kids during the weekend, Bailey. I'm afraid. But I need to make time to actually catch up on some of your streams. See what you're doing. But I promised my daughter to work on her. What do you call it? To work on our racing simpit. Our you know what it's called? Timbrick. So don't know if you guys saw the pictures on Twitter. I think I need to go to my own profile for that. But I got that guy in today. Donated to my friend of mine. Because we're building this. So that seat's going to be over here. Obviously, I still need to build an extension here to put the shifter more where we are. And yes, we have the shifter on our left in Australia because we drive on the wrong side of the road over here. But yeah. Oh, okay. So I need to check out the grid container at some point. But yeah, we're building a nice little setup. It's currently all hooked up to my what you call it? It is all hooked up to my PlayStation at the moment. 2 shakes. I just need to check something. Very good. That's on. Okay. So let's go and do our mapping logic for now. I don't really mind that we currently have our input maps a little bit hard-coded. Oh, that didn't work. I was hoping that was going to change the size of it. But I don't mind currently having these hard-coded in here. But I think at some point it would be nice if we have some sort of data structure behind it. In which case we might get some more things in there. Which reminds me, we also need to have our inverse mode in here. But for now, I want to make sure that if we click on the map button, we can actually get something like, okay, do an input on one of the controllers and it will auto-configure for that controller. Ah, rockets. Yeah, that's a little bit troublesome around here. I think you need to have a license for building rockets, but it is a lot of fun. Depending on what sort of rockets you build, of course. Let me see. All right. Because one of the things that we could do is make that a sub window so that we have the same logic embedded everywhere. Well, let's just see what we can do. Starting with this one. Let's go and do it like that first. All right. Actually, we should probably populate everything first. I think that's probably a good idea as well. So I'm going to add a new function here called update mapping display. We are obviously going to call that from our ready function. There you go. But we need to also call that whenever our mapping changes. Alrighty. That also means we want to have our input map here. So I'm just going to go and steal that from our car. Here we go. We obviously want to have access to that over here. There we go. And let's just start with this. And that's going to be device. And that is going to be axes. And we then need to go and say input map dot steering device input map dot steering axes. So obviously we need to do the same thing for throttle and for brake. And again, like I said before, we really should change this to something a little bit more generic. But for now, oops. Might help if we actually update the correct thing. Total. There we go. Let's go and have a look. Device 0, axis 0, axis 3, axis 3, which is exactly how we had set that up. Perfect. All right, so eventually we'll have our drop down there where we need it for our mode, and we'll have a tick box for inverse. All right. So when we press on our map button, what I want to do is open up a new dialog, which basically says, hey, do an input, and we'll then react on that input and apply it. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to go and say map input. We're going to do 0. When it's 0, it's off. In this case, we're going to say map input is 1 so that we know which one we're doing. Maybe I should make that an enum. I think that's nicer if I make that an enum. Enum. Can't do that, I think. Yeah, whatever. None. Steering. Throttle. Actually, I'm going to call this map. Brake. Eventually, that'll probably be an index in a list. Map is none. Doesn't like that. Doesn't like that. Fine. I think it should always still be an integer. Map dot steering. There we go. And now we need another little pop-up over here. And that's just a pop-up to show what we're doing. So pop-up dialog. I need to make that visible. We're gonna move that over here. Make that a bit bigger. And here we're just gonna put a label. Boom. Boom. Oh, what did I do? I accidentally moved my screen. There we go. Center, center. Fonts. Load. There we go. And I also want a button in here. And it's going to be called cancel. Oops. Did I? Oh. Opened the wrong one somehow. So use the same font again. I'm going to move that over there. Maybe move this slightly up. Let's go. Actually call it cancel. Rests. There we go. So obviously if we cancel, what we just want to do is set our map input to map none. And then we want to do our call that map dialog. And we're going to go and say visible false, because obviously we want to close that. In a way, yes, it's more that nodes are basically owned by the node tree. So whenever you remove it from the node tree and you don't properly discard of it, then obviously you can have dangling pointers around. A lot of stuff in Godot is reference counted, so it will automatically clean up after itself. But nodes is one of the few places where it's not. So so you actually have to take care of cleaning up, because the pointer is really just a pointer, and if you delete the actual node that you're pointing to, you'll have a potential problem. Let's go and open up that up centered. Perfect. And the reason I'm doing this is because obviously I want to react to my inputs and I want to see what we can do there. So let's just see if our little dialog opens or not. So if I press map, we get our perform your input to map. Now there is no perform right now. So all I can do is cancel and close that one. So let's go and make our mapping actually work. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go say input event. So we're going to go and we're going to start with checking for joypad motion. So we should be getting an input event when we are moving our controls. And well, let's see how well that works, because we might get too much noise on our controller. We might get this too quickly. So let's just see how often we get this as an event. It's probably a good idea. So we just had this one still open. So let's go and have a look over here. We can probably... Oh, we get a device over here. That's cool. Okay, let's just go and say print input device. Let's see. All right. Input device. Oh, that needs to be an array. Let's see this. Let's see if we get a lot of input spam or if that actually works. Oh, My joystick wasn't on, was it? Oh, look at that. Cool. That does work, but it is giving us a lot of spam. But that's all right, because what we're simply going to do is we're going to... Oh, that's why that was going wrong. We need to do this. Get a percent F. Fees value. Boom. There we go. What I also want to do is if map inputs is map none, then we're going to return. So we're only going to do this if we're trying to map an input. Hey Drago, how are you? Oops. There we go. So let's see. Oh yeah, we of course need to have this open. See, we can see that we can get quite a lot of inputs. And interesting enough, in this case, you know, it even was working when I was using my joypad. When I turned on my joypad after starting Godot, which was really interesting. All right, so what I want to do now is I actually want to say event axis value is bigger than 0.5. So we're only going to react if we actually have a serious input. So if we just accidentally have a little bit of input, we don't really want to react to this. We're going to say, hey, if we have a serious input, we're going to react to this. Let's keep that print in there. Makes it nice and easy. So in this case, what we're going to do is obviously checking what our switch command. No, we don't. I'm pretty sure that Godot has a switch command, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. For now, we'll go and hard code this in. And in this case, we're going to say input map.steering device is event.device, and input map.steering axes is event.axes. There we go. The other thing that I want to do over here right now is if change is false. Here we're going to say changed true. There we go. Boom. If changed, we're going to do our update mapping display. There we go. There we are. To have a look. So let's go and yeah, now we got our axes too. Oh, we need to reset our mapping at that point in time. Okay. We can actually do that over here. So what we're going to do here is map input is map none, because we've done that one, and our map dialog visible is false. So as soon as we map something, we say, okay, we're done. Okay. That now means that we should be able to do the same for our throttle. On throttle map. And the same for our brake. I'm going to add the functions in first. Brake map. Okay. I'm going to move these over here. I'm going to copy this and copy that. So that is going to become brake. That's going to become throttle. Copy this twice. That's it. Throttle. We're going to change our throttle device. I'm going to change our throttle axes. And here we're going to change our brake device. Our brake axes. There we go. The best way is to start talking to Akian on IRC and say that you're interested in looking into that. I also know that Vinen is going to be working on GD Native, and just discussing it with those guys. They're probably the best people to talk to and say like, hey, I want to hold my hand up here, and then see what they say. All right, so I'm gonna map that to 7. That one's not working. Aha. All right. Because I didn't change this one. Okay. Okie doke. So the next thing we really need is we do need to have our... I'm actually going to move this out of the way because it's open-centered anyway. Let's see if that indeed works. Yeah, that works. Cool. Sweet. So that's nicely spread out that way. That's pretty cool. All right. Now, one thing that I'm really wondering about is whether I need to get... I think I need to go a font size smaller. I don't like the fact that the font looks this big. You might keep that for the buttons, but I think the text needs to be smaller. It's taking up a little bit more space than I like. So I'm going to change that first. And that means creating a new font. Dynamic font. There we go. And then we just load our... I think it's this one that I need to do. Yep. And then I actually like the size 16. So let's go and save this one. And that's going to be 16 points. All right. Copy. Paste. Paste. That also means that our size can become smaller. Yep. Oops. And this one too. Okay, now we need to do the same thing for this one. There we go. But I want to make these wider. I think. Yeah, that's good enough for now. And these are eventually going to be smaller because we need to put our inverse in there and our mode in there. But for now, I just want to line everything up again. Now, Should we make these smaller? I think this should also become a smaller size font. There we go. That's good enough for me. And I just wanted to do that because I wanted to have a bit more space here so that we can have our invert tick box there in a minute. And we're going to have our little drop down there that can switch the mode. Alrighty. So let's make this. Let's start by making this 350. All right, gonna add a checkbox in. It's gonna be over here. Okay, I think. Oh, there is some more. That's interesting. Okay. 3, 2, 5. I wonder why it has a little bit of margin there, so I need to have a look at that in a minute. But for now, I want this to have the invert. There we go. Where's my font? There we go. Do we have some sort of margin here? No. I don't know. I don't like unexplained size differences. Or did I just get it wrong size-wise? I think it's 71 to get it to be exactly lining up. Very interesting. I'm gonna go and invert. I'm gonna go and duplicate that so that we can put one over here. And here we need to do the same thing. No, this one. Okay. Let's go and oops. Do this. That's going to become throttle invert pressed. There we go. We want to have that. Now let's have the throttle ones together. All right. Let's do this first. Let's say a V box container / throttle / invert / pressed is going to be input map dot throttle inverse. I'm going to copy that out and we're going to go and reverse that here. There we go. Let's have a look and see how that works. So right now, if I move my stick up, I start throttling. Very good. If I now invert that, that means I am going to be driving when I'm not pressing my button and going faster and faster. But when I hold my button up, then suddenly I stop. Let's go back down to there. I can reverse. So obviously that makes no sense for a controller right now, but I needed that for our steering wheel. Cool. Perfect. All right, let's do the invert on the other one as well. Why is that so much bigger? I don't get that. There we go. Press that one, and that's going to be called on brake. Invert pressed. There we go. And we want to move that with the other brake functions. And again, I think there are a lot of ways to improve how we're doing this. But now I'm interested in getting it all to work. And then we'll start improving on it. Because obviously I don't really want to copy all this code time and time and time again. So either we're going to be using that line as a component at some point in time so that we can just reuse it a couple of times. Or something of that order. And I think that also our mappings, instead of there all being separate variables, that actually needs to become a structure. Some sort of array or dictionary or something like that, so that we can also more easily save it. But we'll see how we can make that work. For now, we're just going to do it the straightforward way so that we can get everything to work the way that we want, and then we can start doing more stuff with it. Okay. Okay, so we now need a selection box for our modes. So we have our 3 modes here. So we need a drop down for that. Now I've got no idea what sort of drop down. We got your menus, but I'm not quite sure if that is what we want. I don't know if this is the right choice, but we'll soon find out. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I need to add items in there. Okay. Bit of a shame that we're going to have to duplicate that for multiple things, but we'll see. So I'm going to have a minimum size of 100. I actually do not want to have text in there, so we're going to leave it like this. Okay. Call that mode. And let's start in our ready by saying vbox throttle mode dot add item. So like this. And I guess that's 0. No, 2, 2, minus 1, minus 1 to that. Let's just see if that works. Okay, so we have those options in there. Okay. So modes dot. Okay, so what is the mode? I guess it's select. Yeah, why not? Dot select input map dot throttle mode. There we go. Cool. And now item selected. Oh, dang it. Do that again. Make sure that the type name is in there. Else it's not going to work. Put it over there. Put map throttle mode is vbox. Ah, index, I think. You can just copy that as is. Okay, dokie. All right. Now, one of the ways that we can test that is right now my thumbstick is going up, and that's a -1 value. So we still need to change the size a bit. I actually want to map that to my trigger, but that now needs to be mapped from 0 to 1. And that means that now my trigger is working. Yay! That's pretty cool. Alrighty. Huh. Thanks, Bailey. Yes, I do have a Patreon. Although my Patreon is actually for creating tutorials. So I am working on my next tutorial. I recorded most of the footage yesterday. So it's actually all about what we did last week in the stream. So all the gear shifting stuff, I've condensed that into a 10-15 minute tutorial, hopefully around that time. So should be out sometime next week. Maybe next weekend, if I'm lucky. Depends a bit on how things will go at work. Alright, so let's duplicate that. Move that over here. Let's go and change that like this. Also means that I'm actually going to do that over here. I should have done that first. Now, I don't know why we have this small... Looks like we've got about 2 pixels on each side that get added. I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe that is actually on here that we have Yeah, we might be getting some extra space that way. That's okay. So this is 225. So I'm going to go and change this to 225 as well. We're gonna make that one 96 as well, so that everything lines up nicely. But obviously that one needs to be getting its own one. Oops. Oh, my computer does this from time to time. Come on. Wake up. There we go. Windows deciding to be weird for some reason. Oh, no, not that one. This one. So, here we go. Break mode. Now, unfortunately, I need to duplicate this. It's a bit unfortunate. But it is what it is. Again, this is all good reason to move some of this stuff into its own little sub scene. Probably will be doing. There we go. And there we are. We've got our mappings done. Now, why are they still slightly different sizes? Something didn't get saved. Or is that because this is actually... I think we probably just don't have enough room. Okay. So let's actually make this a bit bigger. Let's give that 30 more space. This one as well. And that means that I want to give this one a little bit more space. There we go. That should do it. Perfect. Alrighty. That now fits nicely. Okay, cool. Okay. I'm gonna put another V box in here. Or horizontal box, I mean. Because what I'm missing is a header. There we go. And that one, I do want to use my bigger font. Just to make clear that is a header. So, 75. 75. And I actually want this one to be centered. Okay. Then for our device, and I'm going to use this size for that, 225. Let's call that input. So this is going to be 225 maps. Call that one range. One, 6. There we go. You know what? I'm going to make that for the full width. I think that might be nicer. So... that's one. Good enough for me. There we go. Got some headings. All right, good night, Bailey. Good luck with your work. Alrighty. So again, obviously this is not a final design or anything like that. This is just, straightforward little implementation of making sure that we can map stuff. We now need to save this somehow, I think. See if we can save a mapping and we can reload a mapping. Or just save the mapping as is. So that it remembers it for the next time we use it. I think I'm just going to do that. Eventually I'll do some profile stuff that you can easily switch between controllers. Because I can imagine, just like me right now, is I'll be switching between my gamepad and my steering wheel, and I don't want to keep setting this up every time. But I think that we need to do two things. One is whatever is currently selected, that we save that so that the next time we start the game, we are back where we started. And the second thing is saving just these settings as a profile. But I think for tonight, we're just going to do the saving of what is there right now and the loading, making sure that we don't lose what we've set here. I think we're going to do the save when we close the window, and we're going to do the load when we initialize our application. So that's all going to be in our input map thing. So let's see. If we can find some help about that. So those are all the paths. That's not really what I'm interested in. I think that's eventually something that we need to reorganize stuff for. I think that's a really good idea, because then we can use indeed the two JSON data. I kind of like that. And that also means that we can more easily work with this. For now, though, that's my input map. Oops. Now we'll just save it as is. I'll just create this on the fly here, which is fine. Let's see if it'll allow us to do that. Device. Yeah, axes. So probably this is eventually what we're going to put in our header to use, but I don't want to go down that path just yet. I don't want to upset things too much from what we've done so far. Throttle. Again, we have a device, steering, throttle, device, axes, throttle, axes, mode, inverse. That'll do. That's going to be our break. There we go. Okay, go. Oops. Open. We're just going to do user input map JSON. So if we can open a file, interesting that that's needs to be store line, but anyway, that's what it is. There we go, and I'm guessing that's been closed. Yeah. Okay, and we also need to do file right in here. There we go. So that, in theory, should do that. Now, I'm going to do a print in here, the same as those guys do, because I actually don't know for sure what this path is. So let's see where it goes to. All right. Let's keep a flag whenever we change something. We set that to true. So that we know that we have something to save. That's just mapping. Boom. 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 Okay, cool. That all works. And then that means that over here, I'm gonna say if it's being changed, we're gonna say input map save. There we go. All right. Let's go have a look and see if that works. Boom. So let's go and change. Oh, this thing is turned off again. Let's change it again to our full. So we're going to do that one, which now also needs to go to 0 to 1. And now we're going to map that one. And we're going to say close. And we're saving down to there. Okay, cool. Let's have a look. Oops. Why can't I select that properly? Okay, there we go. So the file's created, but it's really very empty. Sucks. That sucks. What are we doing wrong? We know that our code gets called. go. Let's log what we're saving to see if that actually makes sense. We're putting on file right, so that's good. Let's see what it does. Stop. Which again means I need to go and map this. Map that one. Close. Okay, so we're getting a failed on the file open because we're never getting into here. Okay. I'm not even getting there, so maybe we're checking the wrong thing. So we're calling open, and it returns an error. Okay, so we need to check that on value. All right. Let's see if that wants to work. Oh, I can close that again. Well, we have size, so yeah, that's looking pretty good. Interestingly, that it's it is making a one-liner, but that's all right. All right, so now we need to load this thing. All right. Which also reminds me that we no longer need these prints. Boom. Alrighty. Obviously, on our ready, we want to load that input map. All right. Our load file is file.new. Load file open user input map. JSON file.read. Not quite sure why that is not working the way that I would expect it to. Okay. All right, let's see. How do we load stuff? Okay. Yeah, it's next. There we go. We got some data. Next. There we go. So now we should have a structure with data. The big question here is, this is actually really dangerous what this guy is doing because he's just assigning that directly to his game data. So if the JSON file is damaged somehow, he's going to have a non-functioning game. It's gonna be interesting. Let's see if this works. I've got no idea. Put a breakpoint there. Let's see if that works. So the axis. Throttle mode is going to become throttle mode. That's fine. And then throttle inverse is data.throttle dot inverse equals yes. Okay. Going to be a small yes because I have left it small. Okay. And then we do the same for the brake. All right. So we have a data. Looking good. What is it? F11. 0, 7, 0, false. Cool. And there we have it. We've loaded up all our settings. So again, I think there is some room for improvement with the load over here because the downside of this is that if the JSON file is damaged or edit is wrong or something has happened to it, then it's possible that we just error out on this. So there's definitely room for improvement, checking whether the things are in there. So what I also want to do is I actually want to go make that a parameter so that we can actually use this same code to save and load from a profile file. But for now, we'll leave that as this. Let's see if it still works. Perfect. Still loading. All right. Cool. Well, the default values that we have right now are the ones that are encoded here. And again, you know, right now, this only supports joysticks, gamepads, steering wheels, that sort of thing. It doesn't support keyboard input or anything like that. So that's something that I need to look at. And one thing that I still need to look at, that might be the last thing that we're going to do tonight, is what do you call it? Is curve for our steering. A default for in case of bad, yeah, exactly. So first of all, I need to start checking, okay, how can I figure out whether JSON is damaged or not? Because we really wouldn't be checking every field. And I think eventually what I would do is standardize some of these inputs and just have a function that checks each one of them. So instead of copying, you know, these lines of code each time. Because we're gonna have much more inputs, right? Um, we haven't even looked right now at our shifter inputs, for instance. We obviously want to be able to do, shift up, shift down, and configure which buttons to use for that. I think the direction that I'm going to take here is, first of all, saving this data in a JSON form in here. So instead of having all this, is actually having that as a JSON. And that means probably adding in access parameters to do things with. We'll see. But I think also our settings window, I'm going to make more use of components. So instead of duplicating everything, we'll probably just have little sub windows that we can use and reuse. But yeah, this is a good start, I think. Yeah, probably indeed just have have either objects or just a JSON structure like this is actually good enough, because that's an object in itself as well. Yeah, I guess I could do a resource ref. I did that for my my proc mesh. Those are all sub resources in a resource tree. It works well. I think it might be a little overkill for this. I don't know yet. Yeah, this is the first time I built something like this, so I figured I'd start simple. But yeah, it's just a starting point, right? This is not our end goal, and I think we'll be working on the input system for a little while longer to perfect it. And again, then I plan to do the same thing as what I'm doing now with gears. Now, luckily, gears. Hey, Game Endeavor, how you going? With the gears, it was we contained it pretty well within one night. Although I think it was 2 o'clock last week. I want to make it a bit earlier today. But that was enough that I can then condense that into a proper tutorial. Here, I'm still really exploring, okay, how can we best build this? And this is a really rough cut. There's a couple of really good things in here, especially the mapping things, the fact that we can just press a button on our controller or do a joystick thing on our controller, and we know, like, hey, look at that. That's the thing that's being mapped. This needs to have more structure to it so that we can actually work that way. And again, it shouldn't just do joysticks; it should do keyboards as well. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think we'll be busy with this for a little while longer to kind of affect the way that we do it. And then out of that, hopefully, I'll come up with something that I think is a good practice. And I'll turn it again into a tutorial saying, like, hey, this is what I come up with. This is what I want to do. And I think one of the things that's going to be very important is that instead of having these exports, is to actually have a dictionary for all the inputs, and being able to very quickly switch between what sort of inputs that we have. So, and then mirroring that in the interface. All right. Yeah, so I think our shift up and shift down should really be... Oh, that's interesting how that stays in place. Now it centers it. Okay. That's funny. All right. Because it's the same with the buttons, right? Now for shift up, shift down, those should be buttons. But I actually think that, that depends on what the user decides. If the user wants to use an analog control to do shift up, shift down, can't imagine why, then that should be something that we support. Um, actually, let's do that slightly differently. I think that actually kind of will work. So first things first, I'm going to continue on the way that I'm doing it, even though I want to change this away from these sort of values. I am going to continue for now with that. Gear up device. Gear up. Button. This guy's going to be a button. And that's going to be button 4. Oops. That needs to be an equal sign there. Haha. Alrighty. Actually, that's going to be interesting. Okay. Gear up. Device. Gear up device. Actually, oh, no, this is going to be button. There we go. Button. Nope, button. Again, this is where it's going to become indeed. And maybe I will use references, actually. Reference objects for that. Actually, not such a bad idea. Because then we can use a lot of those internal load and save functions to help us out. We'll see. Yeah, automatic and manual shifting I want to do as well. And I haven't really decided yet which direction that I want to go with it, especially because playing around with the actual shifter on the G29, I actually want to simulate or make the option to simulate proper gear shift. So pressing down your clutch, changing the gears, letting go of the clutch. So we're actually going to have 3 modes of gear shifting. Automatic, where the computer shifts for you. Manual, where you just use pedals / buttons. And then, the full manual way, where you actually also use your clutch and a gear shifting. So we'll have to figure out how to do that. I think that's a little bit too much to go into tonight because I wanna end it in about half an hour. So I think we at least get these buttons involved. All right. So now here, of course, the interesting thing is that right now we have been using our shift up and shift down actions there, and we're going to let that go. So here we have a action is just pressed for shift down. So we need to figure out the change in value, and that's fine. So let's shift down, Boolean, get shifts. All right. bar was gear up and was gear down. There we go. All right. If let me think. This is going to be input get joy. No. Is joy button pressed. Here. Nope. Down device. Here. Down button. All right. Cool. Pass. Else was down. It's false. And we're going to return false in that case. Very good. And in this case, we're going to say if was gear down. Say if it wasn't down. So this is the first time that it's pressed after it was down. Obviously, we're going to say, oops, was gear down is true and return true. So if that is false, we just return false. So that gives us a reaction that only when we're pressing down, we're going to be returning true. And we're going to do the same thing here. Up. Up. And was gear up. Was gear up. Was gear up. There we go. So we have get shift down and get shift up. So that should now be going in here. All right. So this is going to be input map.get shift down. And here we're going to get input map.get shift up. There we go. That now means that we no longer need our input map for this. So trash that one. Oops. Trash that one. There we go. And let's see if our shifter still works. Ooh. Okay, get invalid index on gear up. That's exactly what we wanted to do. So this is like a dictionary. Good thing we checked that. Has. Cool. Input map. All right. It's going to be fun. And obviously, at some point, I'd need to do that for all members. But now we just do the main members. Wow, 1.9% on Steam. That's not bad. Especially when you look at how many people are on Steam. All right, let's see if our... Oh, not on. Here we go. Okay, our gears work just the wrong way around. There we go. And we can drive. Cool. Okay, so they are the wrong way around, which is interesting. So up needs to be 5, down needs to be 4 by default. Okay. So let's go and make that work, that we can actually map them. So go back here. And we're going to start with a new AgentBox container for gear up. don't have enough room for that. This is not, of course, going to be button. There we go. And this one. That obviously needs to have its own one. So disconnect, rest. Gear up, map. So I want to go over here. All right, now I just want to duplicate that one. Should have done it that way before. Anyway, down. And disconnect that and reconnect it. Gear down, map, rest. There we go. Alrighty. Cool. Welcome back, Drago. Louise. Alright. Gear up. Gear down. There we go. Alright. So. Let's go copy this. To over here. So this is going to be gear up. Oops. Gear down. But now we're actually going to do this slightly different because we are going to go and only react on put event joy button. There we go. All right. If event is pressed, okay. There we go. Oh. So. Here. Up. Here. Up device. Here. Up button. There we go. There we go. All right. Here up button. And now we do the same for the gear down. Okay. Let's have a look at that works. All right. So let's map that to B. Ooh. Okay. Invalid index button. Okay. So input event button underscore index. Okay. Settings. So this is going to be index. Yeah. Let's see if that works. All right. Let's map that, and I press my B button. Why did that completely went out? Mapping to device 0, button 1, so that worked. But somehow we completely because that's our action button, and that is our escape button. They already have functions. That's why. So here we got a cancel, which is our B button. That was the one that I just pressed on my Xbox controller. And that ended up canceling everything. Okay, how do we disable that? That's the full input. I just want to disable actions. I think I need to do that by handling the input event, don't I? Hold on. No, it's select here. I think it's that. Can I put handled here? Oops. That's me. There we go. Let's see if that makes it work. Yep. Perfect. So now because we set input as handled, that means that we said we've done our thing. That button no longer needs to be done anything with. Well, right now I can still accept it because I pressed the button correctly. There you go. And that means that I can actually exit that by pressing that button. Cool. And it saved our settings as well. Will go as well. All right. So let's map that again to my bumpers. Here up, here down. And that should mean that I can go gear up and gear down. Cool. So my 0.3 second delay is still in there, and that's sometimes where it doesn't react directly on my button, which is correct. Alrighty. I actually want to take that out for now. And I want to take that one out for now. There we go. Sweet. All right, guys. I think that has given us a really cool start. Now, again, I think we need to bring more structure into this. We're doing a lot of duplicating. What if you map 2 times the same button? Well, then you get really weird behavior. Like if you do the shift up and shift down on the same button, I guess you shift up and down at the same time. I think one will win depending on the logic. So, so you basically break your game. I'm not too fussed by that because at some point we'll do some validation where we say like, hey, this button's already mapped, so let's not map it to something else. Although again, sometimes it is exactly what you want, right? If in the situation where we had my my up and down right joypad mapped to acceleration and braking, just in different directions, then that should be possible. So I think there should be some warnings in there at some point in time where you say, hey, you've mapped this thing twice. Are you sure that you know what you're doing? But I'm not too worried about it. What I am worried about, and what I am very conscious about, especially in VR, because obviously this solution does not yet work in VR. For that, we need to move this into a viewport. And then there's some nice logic in our 2 different implementations for how we're going to interact with that. Yeah, that's called a gear shift, indeed. And that's something that we'll be working on soon as well. Although that's something I need to go to Godot 4 for, because last week we found out that Godot 3 does not support enough buttons to actually make our gear shift work. It's interesting. I might put a PR in for that at some point. Anyway, so yeah. So yeah, I think we need to put a lot more structure in there so that it becomes easier to change, to add new mappings in there, because we're eventually going to have 6 more mappings for our, or actually 7 for our gear shift. We're going to have another mapping for our clutch. So, and there's bound to be other buttons that we will want to have in there. RS rocket, exactly. And I think we need to have some more structure in this. So I think we're going to continue on this next week. Let's start bringing that structure in. But I think for as far as I wanted to get tonight, this was really, really good. All right. Now, one thing that I want to double check before we go. No, not yet. That's a shame. All right. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you guys learned something from this. I know it was a lot of experimentation and figuring out how to make things work in 2D. I'm not a 2D guy. But yeah. I'm pretty sure there are better ways to structure the interface. And as I go on with this, I'll probably improve on it. But as a first go, I am pretty happy with how far we got. So yeah, to be continued next Friday. Thank you all again for watching. And yeah, see you guys next time. Bye.